One day I went to Wal-Mart to go shopping with my mom and I had my AirPods in because a bunch of new songs came out that day. Apparently people were able to hear the music but paid no attention to it except for this Karen right next to me. She followed me and my mom to all the aisles and eventually went to the checkout with us too. She then said, "Excuse me, your music is too loud, can you turn it off?" I whipped my big ass head backward and said, "It ain't loud enough if I can still hear you." Karen. It turns out her name was actually Karen. My mom quickly told me to shut the fuck up but I kept going at it. This bitch would not shut up, so I eventually pushed her cart into her and she fell and started to fake cry. Let's just say I got my ass beat with a chancla later that day. One time my boyfriend came over and we decided to do the dirty. Anyways, it was great but his phone was in his pocket when he did it and he accidentally somehow but dialed 911. We were getting down and dirty and everything was going swell until we heard knocks on the door very aggressively. We thought it was the dog making noise outside the door until we heard a man yelling to open the door. We both got dressed really fast, went outside, and saw it was the police. I was scared because I thought they found out that I stole a bathing suit from Target, so I started sobbing. Then they asked what was wrong and I couldn't stop crying, so my boyfriend asked why they were here, and they explained they got a 911 call and heard yelling on the phone. I immediately stopped crying and ran inside the house of embarrassment and my boyfriend just said everything was fine, then closed the door. Right after he closed the door he heard laughing from the police and now we know that they found out we were having sex. I'm 16 years old, and last year when I was walking home from school, I saw two little kids that couldn't be older than 9 were walking home a little bit in front of me. I assumed they were brother and sister. Anyway, me being so much bigger with longer legs, I eventually started to catch up to them. And right when I was about to turn off into my street, I noticed a car pulled up next to them and asked them to get in. My heart stopped when I heard the older one say, "But mister, we don't know you." After that I kept walking towards them and screamed out, "Lucy, Mark," because I didn't know their actual names, and they both looked at me. I ran up and said, "Guys, don't run off on me like that. Stay close." I pretended like I didn't see the car pulled up next to them and walked with them until the car drove off. They asked me who I was but I just kept telling them to be quiet until the man goes away. When the guy left I told them not to talk to strangers and walked them home. I explained to their parents what happened and I don't think I've ever seen more grateful parents. When I was like 9 I had this bitch of a teacher that everyone hated. One day in class she was putting posters up on the wall and she had to stand on a table because she was like 4 feet tall, but anyway she asked for someone to hold the table so that she wouldn't fall, so I volunteered to hold the table. So the bitch went up onto that table and 9-year-old me decided to get revenge on that bitch, so I decided to yank the table thinking that she would just wobble a bit, but the teacher deadass fell off the table and went flying. She landed on her back and hit her head and I'm pretty sure she broke one of her cheap ass heels. So long story short, she ended up with a concussion and they called an ambulance to take that bitch away. None of my classmates told the principal on me because we all hated that bitch, so we all agreed to say that she fell off the table herself while we sang Ding Dong the Witch is Dead, but in fact she was not dead because she came back into class the next day and glared at me, but I never got in trouble for it and to this day I still don't feel bad, lol.
One time me and my friends snuck out of the house at night and we went to McDonald's. The employee was asking where our dad was. We didn't know what to say, so we just said he was waiting in the car. Then this big muscly guy walked in and the employee asked if he was our dad and for some reason we said yes. Even though we had no clue who he was, the guy paid for our food. We thanked the man and left, but then he followed us out of the restaurant and told us if we didn't come with him he would stab us. We were scared, so we just did what he said. We were in the back seat of his truck and we were freaking out. But my friend found a glass bottle in the back seat and smashed it over the man's head. The man fainted and we saw he had a pocket knife on his dashboard, so we took it and stabbed him in the arm a few times. We got out of the car and ran back to my friend's house. To this day we haven't told the police and we don't know if the man died. Thank you for your submission.
Okay, so a couple years back my teenage sister was pregnant. Nobody knew at the time, not even her. And so one day I was in my room just hanging out, and I heard a really loud scream coming from my sister's room. Naturally me and my family went upstairs to go check on her to make sure she's okay, and me and my mom walked into my sister's room. And there was blood all over her sheets. And my sister had, I wanna keep it family friendly, so let's just say toy. Anyway, there was a bloody toy in her hand and she kept screaming. Like it was a lot of blood. My mom took her to the hospital cause she didn't know what else to do. And it turns out she accidentally gave herself an abortion with a toy. When I was 8 years old, my parents separated and I was staying with my aunt for the summer. One day my dad picked me up and told me he was taking me home because they made up. He told me that we were going to move to a house next to my aunt. Anyways, on the ride I begged him to drive me to the mall to buy a video game and he agreed. On the way he said he wasn't feeling very good and then a car came out of nowhere and crashed into us. To make a long story short, my dad literally died in the front seat and I only had a few cuts. My mother stopped the move and was obviously devastated and cried every night for 6 months. The only reason she stopped is because she died. Okay, so at the start of the school year, it was almost the end of the day and we were in chorus class, which was last period. Suddenly we started getting announcements on the speakers telling people who take buses to school not to go outside. We were a little concerned because what the fuck. Then the teacher read an email and was clearly trying to distract the class from something. And let me just say that she should stick to singing, which she wasn't even good at except acting, because her distractions made us worry more. More announcements came on and we wanted to text our parents, but the ugly ass bitch kept saying no. Because I didn't give a shit, I still texted my mom and she was driving and trying to text me at the same time. Don't at her was just as worried. Eventually I started to cry like a little bitch, but my friend comforted me. The teacher told me to get some water but I kept saying no, but she forced me to. Like, bitch, I don't need a bubbler, I need a therapist anyways. My mom called and the teacher wanted to talk to my mom and I DK what she said, but it made the teacher let me leave and go to the front door where dozens of kids were. My old 7th grade teacher helped me out and got me out of the school sooner. And I ran to my mom's car because I wasn't trying to get shot, bitch. Eventually we found out that there was a fucking shooter at a house near the bus lane at the school, which is why students couldn't leave. So this is the story on how I think I killed my neighbor. So we just moved into this new house, and my neighbor kept giving us her stuff and her food. One day she even gave us her underwear cause she didn't want it anymore. Mind you, she was really old and we didn't want to hurt her feelings and tell her we don't want the stuff. 8 days ago she gave us her dirty rug and my mom was not having it anymore. We knocked on her door and told her we didn't want her things. She acted like she didn't know who we were. The next day she dropped a package in front of our door. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I waited until it was dark to throw it away. She saw me and got really sad. Her eyes started twitching and she started to have a seizure. I called an ambulance and they took her to the hospital. The next day her husband told us that her heart failed and that she had dementia. One time in 9th grade, me and my friend were coming home from school and she forgot her house key and her parents weren't home, so I climbed her 2-story house and broke in through her window, and I guess while I was doing it her neighbor saw and thought I was legitimately breaking in and called the cops. Then they showed up while we were pretending to do coke with lines of pixie stick dust, and the cops left the fucking front door open and her dog got out and she had to chase it while they interrogated me. ACAB LMAO.
Story time about the time I went to the ER. So the entire day before I had a cramp, but I thought I was just gonna get my period, so I brushed it off. The next morning I woke up like 10 minutes before my school alarm with the worst fucking pain in the world, but I assumed it would go away, so I went downstairs to brush my teeth, but with every minute the pain got worse. I eventually woke my mom up and told her, and she said we'd go to the doctors when they opened, but then the pain went from 0 to 100 and I literally was curled up in a ball on her bed sobbing in pain. She then said she'd take me to the ER, but the bitch decided to shower first, so I had to wait like 15 minutes for her while I was crying in pain. We finally leave and I'm still in my pajamas and I'm literally groaning in pain in the passenger seat for the 20-minute ride like a woman who's about to give birth. When we got to the ER, the doctor kept asking me if I've ever had sex, and bitch I wish, but no sir, I'm saving it for Harry Styles. But he didn't believe me and my mom literally had to say that I hadn't multiple times, but the doctor was convinced I had twisted ovaries for some reason and he
I met my boyfriend on January 1, 2020 or so, I thought. We hit it off and started dating only a day after knowing each other. The months go by and I realized I really love him. He's perfect in every way and has a similar personality to me. Anyway, so we talk about our childhoods a lot, and since we've always lived less than 30 miles apart from each other, we went to a few of the same places, including the Ike Play place. So earlier today my boyfriend posted a picture of a kid and he looked familiar. I had a flashback to when I was a kid. I remembered that I pushed that kid in the ball pit a few times, so I asked who it was. And he said it was him. I asked him if a girl ever pushed him into the Ike ball pit. He said yeah. For a few weeks whenever I went there was this girl with long ass red curly hair. Always wore blue jeans and was always starting stuff with the boys. She scared me and gave me nightmares. One thing about me is, I've always been a tomboy. I'm also a redhead and my hair is wavy and curly. He described me as a 7-year-old perfectly. So there you have it. 7-year-old me pushed the love of my life into a ball pit 9 years before officially meeting. I guess I was just meant to annoy and scare him forever. During the summer I was in a relationship with a kid named Jason. Things got carried away the first few weeks when his dad called my phone and asked me to come over and help him finish up his pool. Once I arrived at his house, his dad welcomed me into the house but then told me Jason wasn't there. I was confused but decided to wait until Jason came home. His dad welcomed me to food, TV, etc. His dad is smoking hot, so I did whatever I had to make him comfortable with me. Turns out he was more than comfortable with me. He called me up the room a few hours later and told me to be very quiet. I realized what was about to happen, but I didn't care. I wanted him. He stripped me down to my kitty jar and I was so horny. A few weeks later I had to break up with Jason because I took a pregnancy test and it tested positive. In a few weeks I have to go check who the father is because if it's his dad's I'm moving to fucking Texas.